This training will be for triage and medical history. We're going to walk through the process. And so first, I just want to start by saying thank you all so much for your determination with Athena. I think we've all learned a lot and come a long way. So I'm really grateful for everybody's willingness, to be flexible with the system. And then if you would like to follow along with the written training, you can find that in the same email where the most recent reminder was sent out. It's the written version that you can click the link for. That same link will be available on all of our desktop computers. And so you'll be able to find that just on your desktop when you log in with St. Mary's Legacy Clinic, if you ever need help during the clinic itself. Yes, Donna?
Can we have a paper copy also available on clinic?
If you would like to bring your paper copy, you're welcome to do so. We're not going to regularly keep copies on site because that really adds up, the number of copies laying around. So we're going to have the web version available. And then if you'd like to bring your copy, of course, you're welcome to do so. And you can always print more copies as well. Okay, so we're going to get started with the login. So your login will be the first letter of your first name and then your last name, often followed by a number, and then your password. So you actually have to change your password once every 3 months or less, which is quite often. What I've been recommending to people is adding a number to the end of your password. And then that's an easier way to remember, just adding one number. So I actually just had to change mine this morning. I added a 2. Okay, so I'm going to click go as if we were in Crab Orchard. If you click Crab Orchard and you're not actually in Crab Orchard, you can change that here down at the bottom. So I'm down in the right-hand corner and I'm going to click Rutledge. We'll say we're in Rutledge today. Okay. So from here, just a couple general things for those who haven't yet heard this. If you need to refresh your computer at any point, or you ever get lost and you just want to start from scratch, I always just click on the AthenaNet here in the upper left-hand corner. If you click AthenaNet, it will bring you back to your main schedule, and then you can go back to the day. If you do not yet have all of your days selected for the month, then you will go over here to this little plus sign in your upper right-hand corner, click on that, and then select all of the departments. Once all of the departments are selected, your calendar should show up to the current day with any appointments, and then you can change your calendar over here in the corner if you want to look at the next schedule that you will be volunteering for. So one other thing over here in the bottom right-hand corner, in the very right-hand corner is called Athena Text. From Athena Text, you can send messages that are confidential and within Athena. So I'm over here in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to click on this, and then you can click on colleagues to start conversation. Say I want to send sister a message. Then I would click on her name. And then I would start, I can either continue a conversation or I can start a new conversation with her. And so this is a way that if you want to send a message to the site manager or, to the other triage station, you're able to find the person's name in there and then say the topic. I'm just going to say test, and then in the message test as well. So from here, I'm going to click send. And this message is just like a text, but it's confidential. And so you can send these messages within Athena as you might need to, especially with the site managers. It will be very helpful. Yes, Martin.
So by confidential, you mean they're HIPAA compliant?
Yes. So by confidential, I mean it is HIPAA compliant. So you can send patient information in there without worrying about, it coming from somewhere else. And then, so sister just sent me a message so you can see that it works. So new message will pop up in your right-hand corner here. So I'm just going to click on the right-hand corner, test received. Thanks, sister. And then to make it disappear, you just click on the same box down there again. So I'm just clicking right on the little, it's like a message box in the corner. Yes, Martin.
There's a question. Can you show the button again?
You can't see it on the big screen.
Okay, I don't,
See it's the way
it might be cut off.
Yeah.
Okay, so it might be unfortunately cut off on the Zoom call. I'm happy to show you in person, but it's right here next to tasks. You can't really see it, but what it looks like is just if you see a picture of a, like
conversation.
a conversation box, then that's what's right here in the corner, on the right-hand corner. And I'm going to click on it down here in the right-hand corner once again, just to show it pop up. And then if you click the same box again, it makes it disappear. Okay, so that's, yes, Martin?
Can you put your cursor by the button?
Sure. It's right here in the bottom right-hand corner.
That might.
Yeah.
No.
It's all.
Oh, there's.
Now you can, I hope now you can see, it's the bottom right-hand corner here. So mine says 0 right now because I've read all of my texts.
Sisters, that actually works better because it doesn't come.
Great. So we will keep on this view. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and start with the triage. Okay. So before you get started with the triage, it's always helpful to ask the patient's name and date of birth. So whether you click on the patient's name and then ask, or if you ask and then click on the patient's name, always ask the patient's name and date of birth so that we can confirm that we have the right person. So I just clicked on the patient's name. You can click anywhere in there. And then okay. So then from here, we're going to go to intake. So the first screen you arrive at will tell you, it's just like the patient's chart, as if you had a physical chart in front of you. And that physical chart has tabs. So over here on the left-hand side, you'll see my mouse scrolling down. We have a bunch of tabs. So if you had the patient's file in your hand, it works the same way. You can click through the different tabs and then see any allergies, their problem list, their medications, and just click through the list as you might need to review. And then once you're ready to get started for the patient, then you're going to click over here on the screen button, go to intake. So you will not be able to enter any information on the previous screen. You need to click go to intake to actually be able to enter information. Once you arrive at this next screen, the very first thing you need to do is click on with staff. Staff is the same as triage. So you all are the triage people. So you're going to change the patient's status and then also change the patient's location. So this is the first thing you do in triage, and this is the last thing you do in triage. And the reason that this is important is because that change is reflected on the schedule. If you never change this with staff and triage, then it will never say on the schedule they're actually with triage. It will continue reading that they're waiting for triage or ready for staff is really what it says. So please make that your first action once you arrive here. Okay. So a couple of general things about the chart in front of you. Again, you'll have the patient's name and date of birth. If you haven't yet asked it, please do so now. And you also have this exclamation point here. We call this our post-it note here in the left-hand corner. On this post-it note will be any information that's important for everybody to know about your patient. So this information should not be information that is just for that day, like it should not be something like high blood pressure or needs refills. What we would like this post-it note to contain is information that would be good for everybody to know. So whether that's difficulty ambulating, difficulty reading, or anything that might be helpful for everybody just to know as soon as they open the patient's chart. So this is patient always short of breath. So if they arrive and they're really short of breath, it might be the norm for that patient. Or some people have put in like, please give the patient water as soon as they arrive if they're a tough stick. Okay, so now that we have that basic information, we're going to go ahead and go through each area that needs to be input with information. The first is your reason for visit. That's the same as your chief complaint. So we ask that whenever possible, you actually take a reason that is given in the box. So I just typed in hypertension and I'm going to click on hypertension. That automatically adds to over here as your chief complaint. The reason it's best to type in the reason and click on the reason rather than just use the note is because for our reporting, it's much easier to run a report with the ones that are already input there. If there's a common complaint that's not in there, let me see. Okay, so gastric reflux, for example, is not in there, but I know that GERD is in there. So if there's, if you say gastric reflux, we don't have both gastric reflux and GERD, but know that if you say like short of breath or, shortness of breath might not be in there. Oh, it is. Okay. Maybe difficulty breathing isn't. Okay. So difficulty breathing isn't in there, but shortness of breath is. So go with shortness of breath since it's really the same complaint. If we don't have the complaint in there that it would be a common complaint you think should be added, please let us know because we can add different reasons for visit to the system, and it's not a problem to do that. However, if you cannot add the right information you think more should be included, then you can just click on the note. What's really nice about Athena is that there's often areas where you can click the plus sign and include information that is available for everybody. And so it will keep the consistency of the plus sign and then everyone has these available. But if you ever need to add information, almost all of the sections have this note feature. The note feature is really nice because if you need to say something else of, patient here for 3 months hypertension check, you can add that information. However, I would say before adding something like that, actually check is 3 month. Oh, look at that 3-month checkup. So it would be better to include the information from the answer choices given when possible. When it's not possible, you can click on the note. And if you need to add, you just click on it again. What's another nice feature about Athena is that it saves as you go. There's not a save button here. And so as you go through the information, it's saving automatically for you. Okay, so then to progress through the patient's chart, you can either click on the next button, the green next button here in the upper right-hand corner, or you can click on the next item down the list. So either will do the same thing. So I'll do both so you can see it. So I'm going to click next, and then it will bring me to the patient preferences. But then I can go back up to reason for visit and just click down. So either will bring you to the next section. Okay, so then in the next section, this information should have been entered by Triage, so you shouldn't need to enter it again. But if it has not yet been entered, then please take care of it. We can e-prescribe now. So if you put in the pharmacy, please make sure it's the right pharmacy for the patient by just clicking on the little plus sign. Show that again. You click on the plus sign by pharmacy, and then you would add the right location. And then make sure you click the right one since the prescriptions will be sent automatically. So the pharmacy already is input in there, so I wouldn't worry about that too much unless the patient told you, their pharmacy changed. LabCorp will always remain the same. Again, if it's not already put there, then please input this. It must be the 1932 Alcoa Highway. And this is the place that all of our labs are sent and processed. Okay. And then care team, if you're at either Decatur or Athens, then Ray Mental Health may be in there, or the other places through volunteer behavioral. And so you can add those at this place. Again, the details for that will be found in your written instructions. And that would be the same for other mental health care teams that you can't input here. The next one is vitals. So here you're going to input what we have been doing previously of the height, pain scale, pulse, respiratory rate, temperature, weight. BMI will be automatically calculated for you once you put in the weight and the height, and then blood pressure. If the blood pressure or really any of these values is abnormal, then please retake and then you can enter a second. So you just can add a plus and then you'll be able to enter in a second set of vitals for that patient. Yes, Marley.
Could you point to where we put the second vitals in? If we
Sure.
Do it at the end of the visit to recheck.
So if the question was, if you do the vitals at the end, which is a good idea because, you know, then they sit there for longer. I agree. So if you get to the end, we'll say we're, you know, down in HPI, and then you say, okay, now I'm going to check the vitals. Then you would actually just scroll back up, go back up to vitals again, click on vitals. And then, like I said, you can just click the plus and it adds another place where you can select and input more vitals. Okay, and then birth weight, you can ignore that one and then include oxygen saturation. Okay,
Let's put time on there when you take the temp again or the vitals again.
so it does, the question was, does it include time? I do not see a place where time is included, but you can always put down here in the note, you know, the difference in time. That's the benefit of having the note option, is that if there's any information you think would be helpful for the health care team to know that's not included in the main area, you can always add it in the notes section. And that's true for each section. Good questions. Okay. The next section is allergies. So we already have penicillin allergies in here, but let's go ahead and add one for fun. So again, I'm going to click on the plus sign next to the category that we're in, and we'll say that this person is allergic to sulfa drugs. Sometimes you got to be creative with figuring out which one. All right, so we'll say sulfadiazine. And then it's helpful to put the reaction because there's some medications like the penicillins, if it's a really minor reaction, sometimes, you know, you can titrate and the patient might be able to receive a penicillin or like a cousin of a penicillin again. So it is helpful to have, you know, is it anaphylaxis or is it just, you know, like itching? So it's helpful to say, you know, which really that can be fatal, but we'll just say severe. And then if you know an onset date, you're welcome to put it. If they've, you know, had it as long as they can remember it, that's not as important, but always as much information as possible is the most helpful.
Sister,
Yes.
do you use that second reaction button? Like if you want to add, they say they have a shortness of breath and hive.
You
So
could.
you would just click on that second one.
Yep.
To add the hive.
Good question.
Okay.
So the question was, if there's more than one reaction, would you put both? Yes. So we'll put a second reaction here. Let's see if we can do hives, and we'll call that mild to moderate. And so you can have more than one reaction included. Okay. And if they don't have any reactions, then you can just click no known drug allergies right here. Another question?
We're starting to see some of the allergies coming over from MDR.
Mhm.
Can we edit them the same way?
So if the
Because
allergy,
sometimes they'll come back and they'll say they don't have a reaction.
so if some information was put in there, transferred over from MDR, and you do not believe that it is accurate or correct, you're always welcome to ask the patient, and then you can edit the information. Like if this came over from MDR, then, you know, I could click add reaction. I could, even if it's wrong or out of date, you can click on the X to get rid of it. So we'll go ahead and do that. Delete allergy. If you added it by accident, you can click delete added in error, or if they just no longer have the allergy, you would just click remove. And what's really nice, again, I mean, I could be an Athena saleswoman, but what's really nice with Athena is that then it will take things that you've gotten rid of and it will put them up in historical for you. This is the same for allergies, for medications, a lot of the areas. It's going to show you what's active right in front of you, but then you can click on historical over here and see what it's been done in the past, because it's possible you accidentally deleted it on an accident. And in that case, you could click on it and then click this button and it brings it back to your active list. So now I'm going to go back to my active list. We'll say, yeah, I deleted that on an accident. I'm going to restore it. And then I'm going to go back to active and it's there for you on active once again.
Because that bottom one, that antihypertensive,
Yes.
that is an old MDR.
Mhm.
It doesn't have severity in there.
Yes. So if there's anything in the note, whether it came over from MDR or whether, you know, someone put it in there, they didn't get it up in the plus section, it's good to just add it up there and then delete it from the note. Okay. I would think that usually antihypertensive it would be specific. So we'll just say, you know, we'll just put in a specific hyper. intensive medication. And I would, of course, confirm that with the patient first. And then once you've added it up there, I'm going to delete that. Okay. Great questions. Thank you. Okay. Martin.
So the goal, sisters, to get the most complete record possible.
Yes. So the goal, as Martin just said, is to get the most complete record possible. So it's important to try to include, especially these, allergies, medications. It's really important to have these accurate and up to date and include all information as possible. Thank you. Okay. So now we'll continue. I'm going to go click next. Or again, I could have clicked medications down here, would have done the same thing. So on your medications, it's good at each visit to, for medical reconciliation to make sure that this is accurate and up to date with what they're taking and their dosage. An issue that you might see is that this says that it was discontinued on this date. This information was carried over from Athena, so you can actually delete this information if you have time. If not, it's fine to leave it, just ignore it because it's something that came over from Athena. But so you have all of your medications here. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to make this smaller because it can get in your way if that's taking up your whole screen. Of course, you can scroll, but I want you to see that you're able to click on the medication to make it smaller. So, I could expand all of these, which is, to me, just really taking up too much of my screen, but I'm going to make it smaller by just clicking on the medication itself. And you'll find that's true with labs, with medications, really with everything, that it is able to become smaller if you just click on its name again. So I'm just clicking on it, make it bigger so I can add information, or click on it again, make it smaller. Yes, Tom?
I was just gonna say that if the doctor gets in there and sees that you've gotten rid of some of the medication and that patient is still on it, or he wants them to go back on it or something, can he go back into the record and?
Great question. Okay. So the question is, if you stop a medication, but then the doctor wants to continue it, or it was incorrectly stopped on the record, what happens? So I'm going to click on this medication. We're going to stop diclofenac. Just for an example, I clicked the X. Show it again. Okay. I'm going to go over here. Just as I'm going through, I'll go through each of these. So this X gets rid of the medication. This is your flow chart when they were on it, when it was prescribed, etc. This actually adds it to the diagnoses and orders. So I'm going to stop the medication. I'm going to click X, stop. Okay, so but then the doctor says, but I want the patient to be on diclofenac. So you're going to go over to the historical list, and then you'll be able to restart it, just like we did with the allergies.
But he won't be in this screen.
He won't be in this exact screen, but he sees the same things that you do. So then I'm going to restart it with this arrow here, make active, and you can change the start date. And then it's back here on your active list. Okay, and then it's back.
Luke, say they have finished their amoxicillin.
Uh-huh.
So do you remove it from the list?
Or do you complete it?
If they have removed, if they finish their amoxicillin, you can go ahead and get rid of that. And then, under reason, you would just say end of course. And then you can even put the date. They said, I stopped about mid-February. We'll say February 15th and stop. Thanks, Marianne.
Okay, there have also been cases where they'll say, I never took that, or I never picked it up, I never started it. Would you
Sure.
still just put it in historical, or would you make a note?
So I would put that under historical. And then if you say reason, you would say, even if they didn't refuse, you could say patient refused, or you could say, the actual reason that they didn't stop. You can also put under note,
Okay,
patient did
so
not
try to
pick.
the reason that's in the list first of all. But,
Exactly. Mhm. Exactly. Thank you.
I mean, a
Yes,
lot of
Martin?
times,
Oh,
if
sorry, go
it's-
ahead.
if it's, I can't sleep, it gives me headaches, that's when you make the note after you chose the patient, stopped it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Exactly. Yeah, so you can include all that information there. So I'm going to click stop.
okay.
Great question. Okay. And then it will be again under historical list. Okay.
Okay.
Martin, do you have a question?
I do, sister. Is it possible to customize those reasons if the nurses feel that a code is missing?
That could be possible for that area. I haven't done that before. The question was, is it possible to add to those reasons, to edit those reasons on the admin side? I believe that it may be possible. We would have to look into it to be sure.
And then, sister, if they wanted to know how to propose such a change, how would they do it on the website?
And then if you want to recommend that change, or if you have any other question, you're always welcome to contact us on our website. There's a form that you can directly send the question in, or you can email us at info@smlcares.com. So either would be fine. You're always welcome to do so.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you. I'm getting a little bit of feedback just on the microphone from some of the videos. If possible, if you would just mute yourself in between questions for everybody, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay. And welcome. Yes, Marley.
I lost one little part
Sure.
here. When you hit the historical list,
Mhm.
does that bring up then it brings up the meds they were
Mm-hmm.
taking? Then do you click the med that you want to restart again because they still have a few days left when they told you that they weren't taking it?
Yes. So the question is, what if it's on the historical list, but they're not yet done with the medication? So if they're still on the medication, but they're not yet done, then right now I'm under historical. I'll go back to it. So this is your active medications, but if you need to restart the medication, or if they have a little bit longer to go, it should be under historical. You'll click on historical, and then you'll go over again to the medication, find the one you want, and you'll click on this button. And this, it will even show you as you hover over it, means make active. So if you're not sure what a button means, if it's just a symbol that means nothing to you, usually if you hover over it, it will tell you what that button means. So that one means make active.
Okay, I got it.
So go ahead and make that active again. There you go. And then you can go back to your active list and then view them there.
Okay.
Great questions. Okay. So now I'm going to go down to vaccines. So today it looks like the patient has had a couple vaccines in the past. You could always enter in more vaccines if that's the case. We'll go ahead and add a COVID vaccine for this patient. And they had this done, we'll say somewhere else, this since we don't offer them, we'll say in mid-February. And it's always best, to enter as much information as possible for all of your boxes, but we'll click add, and that will automatically add it to your list as well. Yeah.
We've had patients come in and said, yeah, I got the vaccine, but I don't remember what I got.
Okay. If they're not sure what they got, then it's better to at least have the information. If they just have the Moderna and the Pfizer as your options, you can always put it under note, but it's better to at least, for every option, there's always going to be the note option. So if you're not sure, you can always put it under the note.
Thing I've come up against, I asked too many questions of the patient, but someone said not to put it in. Sometimes, I always ask COVID and the flu.
Mhm.
All right. But what happens, so some people that have had the Pneumovax, the Prevnar 13 and stuff, they don't know when they had it, but they've had it.
Mhm.
And, they've had
Mhm.
adult vaccines.
Sure.
Can I put those in even though I don't have a date?
Good question. So if you don't have the date for a medication or the date for a vaccine specifically, what do? So if you put in the vaccine, if they think it's been 5 years, you can just put January 1st, 5 years ago. The date's not so important. If they can give you a date range, that's ideal to be able to put a year, because for example, with Tdap, you should get, once every 10 years. So it is good to have the your information whenever possible, because then you can know when, they might be due for another one. But of course, that might not always be possible. So just do your best if you can add a date.
Well, like pneumovax and stuff is like one time.
So that one's,
At least, you know,
yeah,
they've had it.
yeah.
I know. Okay.
So as Marley was pointing out, for pneumovax is not as important because, it's just a one time, but as long as you have the information in there, for a lot of these, it doesn't require that you put in everything. So because you said pneumovax, we'll just put the pneumococcal conjugate here. And so I can click on that one, and then it does make you put in a date, but you can change the year up here and they'll say, well, I think I got it, about 5 years ago. And so we'll just say, okay, well, maybe it was around like 2017. And then you can just click, January 1st, 2017. And then at least you have a date, so just do your best with that. Okay. So for the next, we're going to keep going here. Your problem list is taken care of by the physician. So you do not need to worry about the problem list. That is taken care of by the provider. And that actually reminds me, medication refills are taken care of by provider. You do not need to worry about inputting if they need medication refills. Okay, next item is family history. So with the family history, generally, with the patients we've seen before with Athena, it should be in there. Of course, with new patients or patients that we haven't yet seen with Athena, then it will not be in there. If that's the case, then you can go ahead and add the disease. We'll say arthritis. The father had it. And then if they know when the father started it, and then you would add in that information. You only include died, this box, if the patient's relative actually died from that condition. So if the father did die from, well, it'd be very unlikely to die from arthritis, but we could say that's, what happened. So we'll say the father died of arthritis at the age of 99. We'll add that. But this, should not be an area you have to redo every time unless there's been changes in your family history. A general rule for triage for all of you, because you don't need to ask, all of the questions again. If the information is in there, then, you would just ask your general, any changes since your last visit, any hospitalizations, anything else we should know about. So, and of course, going over medications and then part of social history. But you will not need to ask all of those questions over again. So I'll go to the next section. We've had a lot of questions about the social history because there's a lot of them. And, do I actually need to do all of them? So we're going to say that, yes, you do need to do all of them, but they will be saved so they won't have to be re-asked every time. So we went through the questions and asked, are all of these necessary? And we do want to have all of the answers for these. Some of the ones that have had, the most concern would be the education and the employment status. Some of those, people understandably sometimes feel uncomfortable asking these questions. The reason we want to know the highest grade level is because we want to know, will they understand if we hand them patient education materials? Are they going to be able to read it? Just so we know, like when we give them forms to fill out, it's good to know where they're at and will they need assistance. So they're uncomfortable to ask, but as with, any question, there's more than one way to ask any question. So it's always helpful to give the patient context rather than, if you just read down this list of questions, I would be kind of feeling affronted as well. But as you're all nurses, there's, many ways to ask the patient's questions and make them feel more comfortable with it. So you could say this question, something like, we have a bunch of questions we're going to ask about your background, and we're going to ask these questions so we have a good idea as a general picture of you as a patient and how we can best serve you. And, just working through each question slowly, but also explaining so they don't feel quite as affronted if, some of those more uncomfortable questions. Because there's also the where do you live? I know this one can be uncomfortable for people as well, but the reality is that, their living environment affects their health. And so we as good healthcare providers want to best serve each of our patients. And so it helps to know what our patients need to be able to best serve them. Right now, we don't yet have advanced directives or medical power of attorney in place information to offer our patients, but that's something we would like to do. So right now, it's kind of getting an idea of who has it, who might be interested in this. So please just add to the note if it's a no, but they would be interested in establishing that for the future. Okay, and so then the items to ask at every visit would primarily be under the substance use. So these are things that it's good to ask at every visit because they might be things that, you know, the provider is working on with the patient of decreasing smoking, you know, regulating alcohol use. So those would be to ask at every visit. And same with diet and exercise, because those, you know, could be part of the patient's goals with the providers. So those would be things to ask at every visit. Yes, Star.
The dietary restrictions. If a person's diabetic, we know they should be on a low carb diet, but that doesn't mean they are.
It's true.
What
Yeah.
do we, what's the right question to ask?
Great question. Okay. So the question is about if the patient has diabetes, they should be on some kind of, you know, low carb diet, you know, but they might not necessarily actually be. What do you do in that case? In that case, you talk with the patient, ask, you know, what kind of things are you eating? You don't have to go too in depth, but at least get an idea, and then you can update that portion.
Same thing with like low sodium diet. If they're recommended to be on the low sodium diet, they say, oh, I'm not doing.
Same with low sodium diet. So with those, you know, you talk with your patients, you get an idea of where they're actually at. So you can put in the realistic picture, because what they're, you know, asked to do or work on might not necessarily be the case. So you just input in this box, you know, where they're at. Yes, Martin.
A question from Mary. Where would you put new hospitalizations or illnesses since last visit?
Good question. So hospitalization since last visit or new illnesses. So you'll put new illnesses under past medical history, and then hospitalizations, you're going to put under also past medical history. Excuse me.
Okay, so if they were hospitalized 2 weeks ago for pneumonia, we just put it under past medical history under other.
Yes, so that's what we're putting for now. If they had a hospitalization, you can put it under note, and then you can also put it under other here.
Where's the past medical history?
Oh, sure. Sorry, the box is probably covering it. Okay, so past medical history is right over here. So anything you're looking for, you just got to scroll down, and then past medical history is right here. Yeah, so it would be a little bit further down. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So then we'll finish up here with surgical history and send you all a link to continue. So surgical history, if they've had any surgical histories, you would add it. If they don't have any, then just leave it as none reported. And again, this shouldn't be an area you have to go over again. It would just be, you know, in the general, have there been any changes? But you shouldn't need to ask, you know, at every visit. So we'll just say the patient had a tonsillectomy. And then you would be able to put in, you know, the surgery date if known. And again, if it's not known, if you could give January 1st of an approximate date, that would be very helpful. Okay, so now we're going to continue. For gynecologic history, obstetric, and past pregnancies, because of the age of our patients, you'll rarely need to ask this, you know, more than once. But of course, date of last pap smear, very important. Where we continue getting pap smears, you know, until the age of 65. Yes, Martin.
Where's the next sister?
Beth Ann, would you send it to Martin as well, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, and then same with most recent mammogram, date of last menstrual period, if, you know, they're still menstruating. And then same for obstetric history. You're going to go through and include, you know, as far as how many, if they've had any babies, if their babies have entered term, premature, etc. So abortions, the reason that this is important to know, I know it can be awkward and difficult to ask, and but we ask about abortions because there can be, you know, complications for the future. And so for our patients, just to be aware of their history, we ask these questions. And abortion as well, medically speaking, is also what, you know, is lay term would be a miscarriage. So medically speaking, when you talk about abortions, it also includes miscarriage. So any, birth before 20 weeks, even if the baby did not survive. Again, for anyone on video, if you could please mute yourself, just because I'm getting a little feedback, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Mary Luke, I have several people tell me I had a pap smear, it was here, but I don't remember when. Is that, will that show up somewhere? Or they don't
Great
know,
question.
they won't even remember the year. They'll say it was a year or 2 or maybe 3, but I had.
Yeah. If you could include, as much as they're able to remember, you can include a date. I mean, approximate again is okay, but then include a note that, the patient, thinks it was 2 years ago, might have been 3. I would put, just for safety, I would put, 3 years ago. So put the further out date, because that is, if they get the HPV testing with the PAP, then it's once every 5 years. And so if you put, or I would put the fewer date that it's been 2 years. So we know if you can put both really, then it would be best, just to give us an idea of when they might need it, because you can go less than 5 years, especially, if hopefully they'll be able to tell you the result, and you can put that in the note as well. If it's high grade, you might want to you're going to get sooner than 5 years, but as long as we have an idea is the best. If it's been over 5 years, then it really, it doesn't matter so much, because once it's been over 5 years, you want to redo it anyways. So,
we on the clinic, we go with an every 5-year plan versus every 1 or 2 years.
Yes, and that is, that is according to, national guidelines, as long as it's a normal PAP. If it's an abnormal PAP, then you will do less than 5 years. But for women age 30 to 65, and maybe in a medical student, you're testing my knowledge here. So women ages 30 to 65 who have never had an abnormal PAP, you're going to do once every 5 years a PAP and an HPV screen. And if they don't want the HPV part, then they can do no HPV, and then it's once every 3 years. But in general, because we try to do the HPV with it, then you just need to do once every 5 years. Good thing I just reviewed my screening, Marianne. Okay. All right. So then we just went through obstetric history as well. And then after that obstetric history, we have any past pregnancies, you can record them in here. And again, as we said with reason for visit, if you can put the information in as much as possible in the boxes or select from the drop downs, that's always ideal, because it's easier for our reporting if you take, from what they have. And so the note is always used as supplemental, but never as the foundation.
So you're saying the past pregnancies can you fill in?
Past pregnancies, I mean, if possible, it's good to know.
Because I know sometimes time constraints.
If time constraints are an issue at that point, that can be something that can be addressed in this visit.
The question is about, what if we're rushed? So what I'm teaching today is the standard of how we would like things to be done. And we know that, of course, there's occasions when things get missed, whether, accidentally or because, you're rushing through, but we want to have as much information as possible included. So whenever possible, include, everything. We have all of these questions in here intentionally, but know that if you miss it on that date, then we will do our best to get it at a future date. Yes, Beth Ann.
Sister Mary Lisa has sent a message and said that we do the pap smears every 3 years.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, there you go.
Okay.
So depending on what guidelines you look at, you might be doing pap smears a different amount of years. It turns out we do them at St. Mary's Legacy Clinic once every 3 years. If, however, there is an abnormal result, then it could be less than that. Okay. All right. So then we'll go next to past medical history. There's a lot of questions in here on past medical history. You do not need to ask every single one. You ask the patient themselves, what past diseases, conditions, etc. they have, and then you will include the yeses for that, but you do not need to click no or ask every single question for this. And if there's not something here that you should include, of course, you can put it under note. All right. Yes.
You can select the no to all at the top and then go down and do the yeses.
Okay, so Star just pointed out, I'm always hesitant to do those. Okay, so Star pointed out that you can click no for all and then click, yes for the ones that are applicable. So you can change those. I would just be I'm always hesitant to, do fill all, because you can do the same with like physical exam when, I'm working with the providers, that you can click normal for all, but you are indicating to the system that they, have no for all. The issue that comes up is that, they might actually have, a past history of anxiety or arthritis, asthma that they actually do have, but they just, forgot about. So just use when you can click things like no for all or normal for all, because it's true for other areas as well. Just be careful with those, because it's possible that they do have one of these that was not. No. So in general, I would say, especially for, which of course, I don't think you all would be entering in physical exam, but I would never click all normal. You know what I mean? And so I would just be careful with that. So a note of discretion, it's available, but use with discretion. Okay. So screening we're not using at this time, and neither are we using quality measures at this time. Could be implemented in the future. History of present illness. So that's just if you would like to put a little extra note of, we put in originally at the beginning the hypertension, but you could include a little bit more, like, I don't know, patient says at home blood pressure takes are doing well or something. So you could put in a little bit more there, but you don't have to. That's an optional area. And same with review of systems, you can ignore that. And then procedure, you're unlikely need to worry about that, since that'll be on the clinic itself. The only other area here that you will need to input will be under blood glucose for orders and results. So under vital signs, you might have noticed that blood glucose is not found under vital signs. And that's because blood glucose is not actually a true vital sign. And so that's why it's not under this area. So in Athena, it's actually found under orders and results. So if you scroll to the bottom, click on orders and results, then we're going to be able to put in a glucose. So I'm going to go up here to diagnoses and orders, click on that. And then once this appears, you'll be able to click from here under point of care testing. I'm going to click point of care to make it expand. And then I'll be able to click glucose finger stick blood. Okay, so once it appears, I don't see anywhere, but it appeared down below. So I can scroll down to there. And then from here, point of care should already be clicked. And we're going to say, for us, we don't actually have any labs that need to be fasting for. That's sometimes some things people are unsure about, but you do not need to be fasting for any of our labs. So we're going to say they're not fasting. And then you'll just, as normal, you would ask, what did you eat this morning? And we're going to say the patient had eggs with French toast and syrup. Let's fingers go. So you can expect a high blood glucose there. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So then we have, what the patient ate, we put in the value, and then we said it was done in office. You're also going to put the source. I typically put venous blood. And then any note if it's applicable. You do need to put who took it and also the date and time. So I'm going to say 125. And then you can select the date. Whoops. You can either put the date and time with AM and PM, or you can put in military time and it will automatically update to AM and PM for you. Okay, and then, if the patient has anything else, you would ask and enter at this point, but we are done with all of triage. And so at this point, again, when we first encountered the patient, got into the chart, we changed the patient's status to with staff in triage. So again, you change it this first thing when the patient arrives, and you change when they're done. So now the patient is ready for provider, and you're going to say the patient is out in the waiting room. So again, that's important because it will change on the schedule. So first thing you do when the patient arrives, name, date of birth, change the status and location. And then the last thing you do when everything is done is you change the status, patient location, and then you click done with intake. Excellent. Okay, and then it brings, after that, it brings us right back to the patient's schedule, and the patient now is marked as ready for provider. All right, that's a lot of information. What questions do you have?
Sister, when you remember the other day we had blood glucose that did not get in it. And we would still do it the same way, go back under orders.
Mhm.
And do it that
So
way.
if there was any information that you get out of the chart and you're like, oh no, I forgot to enter XYZ, I forgot to put in the blood glucose, you can go back. So even though it says ready for provider, you can re-enter the patient's chart. I'm going to click it again. It says ready for provider. So the provider, you know, could go to exam. You could actually go to exam, but we just want to go back to intake. So I just clicked on the patient's chart again. I click on go to intake, and then I can go back to the information and input it again. That should be what you're able to do. I'm just going to click AthenaNet to go back to my schedule. If for whatever reason you're not able to do that, just let Beth Ann or the site manager know that, you know, you have this blood glucose that wasn't entered, because we can always do that on the clinic. And, you know, even at the provider patient education, other people can enter it as well. Any other questions?
What is an easy way, Sister Mary Luke, to kind of go back and look at how their blood pressure is trending, or look how their blood sugar is trending, and if you need to do one or not?
Great question. Okay, so we'll go under, I just clicked on the patient again. So I'm going to go under on the side tab. So again, if you had the patient's physical chart, it would have the same kind of thing, the side chart of all of these tabs. So I'm going to click on the patient's vitals. And because this is a test patient, there's probably not much in there, but for our patients, you know, as they come with more visits, there'll be more. But I could go under vitals, I could go under, really whichever area. And you click on this little wiggly line. When you hover over it, it says view flow sheet, and that's what we want to do. So if you click on view flow sheet, then it's going to bring you, and you'll be able to see any vital signs for the past. We didn't enter any today, so that's why it's blank. But if for whatever visits they come, they would show up here. And actually, you can see it in both graph form or up here. If you want to see in a table, you click on table. So you can see in either form right there. And then same with under their medications, you can see, you know, how often, same kind of squiggly line. You can click on that, and you'll be able to see, you know, when it was started, when it was refilled, etc. And then same with under results, we'll be able to have any blood glucose results for you. So you can click on that, and again on the squiggly. But pretty much all of them will have that option for you. And since we're here, I'll just show you the find. If there's ever anything in the chart you can't find, the very top one here, if you click on find, then you can type in anything, and it will bring that up for you.
Okay.
All right, what other questions? Yes, Martin.
If I had a question during my time in the clinic, how could I self-service to find the answer?
So the question was, if you had a question during the clinic, how could you self-service to find the answer? So if, you know, you are looking for something, you can always go under find. You can always, you know, call one of us over, but there's also this really great support up here. So if you haven't visited the support page yet, if you click on support and then you go to Athena O Help. So under Athena O Help, it will bring up help related pages relevant to wherever you're at. So wherever you're on the patient's chart, if you click on the Athena O Help, then it will bring it up in another window. Are you still able to see that, Marianne? Thumbs up. Good. Okay. So it will bring up related pages to wherever you're at, or you can click on, you can type in information. and then search for articles. So, I mean, there's a lot of information in Athena OHelp. So you're welcome to, explore that as much as you'd like. But those are some of your options. But again, I mean, my safety when I'm unsure about things and I just want to start over, I many times during the day click on AthenaNet and just say, I'm just going to start from scratch, because Athena saves as you go. So you don't have to worry about losing everything by clicking AthenaNet, because it saved everything and I can just go right back into the patient's chart and pick up where I left off. Great questions. Anything else?
Well, what if the doctor has closed the chart and you're like, say you forgot something to put in from a previous visit?
Mhm.
How do you add into that, when the doctor's already closed the chart and signed it off?
Mhm. So the question is, what if the doctor has already signed the chart, but there's something else to input? So there would be a few options for that. Either the physician can amend the encounter and you can input the information, or if it's, something straightforward, you can actually, enter from here that from medications, I can click on the tab and then I can click on the plus and I can add the medication. It doesn't always have to be within a note.
Okay, so suppose like you took 2 blood pressures from a person. I mean, it was high the first
Mhm.
time and then you took it later on.
Mhm.
You forgot to add that second blood pressure.
Mhm.
How would you go back to add that?
Okay, so if you forgot to enter a second blood pressure,
Or signed off
Yeah.
on the chart?
mhm, ideally, you would let the physician know before, but again, of course, sometimes these things happen that you might just forget. There's, always a lot going at our clinic, so it's understandable if you forget. So if you need to enter one of those later, I would actually create a patient case. So for anyone listening and also for all of you here, this is advanced Athena. So it's no, you don't have to apologize. I'm glad you're asking the questions, but I'm saying it's advanced because if you don't remember it and you need to ask again, don't worry, because this is, next level. Okay. So if you ever have information that you can't find a way to put it in, the order's been signed, etc., you're not able to put it in over here, then you can make what's called a patient case. So a patient case is an internal communication mechanism. From the patient case, you click on what we call this a little hamburger over here. So you click on the little hamburger in the upper right-hand corner and click create patient case. Create patient case allows you to put in any other information. It's kind of like a catch-all. So we use it a lot in the office for, like Kappa and, different internal communication, but you can put in other information about what you saw the patient for today. So I'm going to say, second BP take. And then I'll put, the patient was doing much better the second time. Okay. So was second BP take at patient visit today. Time, we'll say it was at 1:15. And then this inputs the information, and then at least it's in the chart. This is like making a patient case is kind of your last resort. If it's something that the encounter's been signed, most things you can add manually within the tabs. But if there's something that you're not able to figure out, another way, the other option would be to say, create the patient case. And I'm going to save that. Once you have saved, then the information is in there and you can exit out. So that's kind of your last resort.
Where did you exit out of?
Sure. Okay. So I clicked on again, just showing how I did the patient case up here in the upper right-hand corner, create patient case. And then I input the information and then I click save. And then I clicked on the X.
Oh,
The X up here. Yes. And since I'm showing this little hamburger up here, The other thing it has in here, which I think most of you have seen by now, is to access the archived files for the patients from MD Rhythm. That's under third-party applications. If you click third-party applications, and then you can click St. Mary's Legacy Clinic, and that will take you to a new window where you can view past files for the patient, which we're not going to take time for that to load today, but that would allow you to view past files for the patient. Okay, any other questions?
Triage people don't really have to go into the third party thing very often, would they?
The question is, do Triage people have to go into the third-party app? I would say, rarely. Does Triage need to access the third-party applications? But I want you to, know that it's there just in case for whatever reason you needed to. These are all really great questions. Anything else before we close this one? Okay, so if there are any other questions, as I said earlier, you're always welcome to submit the form online, email us at info@smlcares.com, or ask us in person at one of our clinics. And we're really grateful that you all, have stuck with Athena, and I think you're all doing great. So please keep it up and just let us know if there's anything else we can do. Yes, Martin.
Ladies, thank you for your service. We are grateful that you come out and provide your time, talents in the communities that we serve. And I just want to say thank you.
And in case you didn't hear Martin's message there, he just said, thank you so much, for all of you do.